Welcome back to the Kristal Night Show, brought to you by Newsweek. This week's guest is Quentin R. Giles, a cultural and political commentator. Quentin and I have been on TV together talking about the news of the day, but today is all about culture. So welcome to the show, Quentin.
Thank you so much, Kristal, for having me, and congrats on your show. I love it. Big ups. I'm glad you have your flowers.
Thank you so much. Well, like I said, I wanted to talk about, a number of issues, particularly concerning Black men. You're a Black man. A lot of Black men have been in the news lately. And so because this is, partly political, but also a little bit cultural, it's probably appropriate that we start with Hakeem Jeffries. He just became the Speaker of the House. He's the first African-American. And by age standards, he's actually pretty young. I think he's 54 years old. Most of our leaders have been in their either 60s or 70s. So tell us, or tell our listeners rather, how do you feel about this new era of leadership? And is he actually going to be the one driving the boat, as the young folks say, or is Pelosi and Clyburn really going to be behind him pushing the envelope?
Yeah, I personally am excited. I'm honestly from a younger person standpoint first. Yes, I will always be a Black man, born that way, will die that way. But from a younger person, that was the first thing when I saw it was going to be Hakeem. And we've been actually talking about Hakeem for a couple of years. Last cycle, when Congress ran and Nancy Pelosi was up for her speakership, really, it was Hakeem Jeffries who got her over the line with progressives, right? He did lots of press conferences, came out very forcefully for her. So a lot of us have been looking at him since then to take Nancy Pelosi's spot. So once he did, I got this new sense of invigoration because it is something that the Democratic Party needs. I am not being ageist. There is something very special and needed from people of a particular age that have lived a particular life to come and give that wisdom to the young folks. But it's our time. It's just our time, hands down. And so from that perspective, I'm excited. I think that is going to invigorate voters. I think it's going to energize people who are outside of the political establishment, people like you and me who really drive off of this stuff, right? To see someone younger in that spot. Now, as a Black man, I'm all for it.
All right.
I am all for it. And it can go in so many different ways. One, because there is a lot of, particularly in Georgia, there was this whole propaganda that Black men aren't participating or Black men don't vote for the Democratic Party and or Black men weren't showing up for who we wanted to be Governor Stacey Abrams, right? Which we saw once the polls came out, exit polls, that just was not the case. But it is a conversation piece that, for whatever reason, feels true, right? Even though we know it's not, it feels true. And so to see Hakeem ascend to this spot, first off, to see Black men actually participate in the political process, to chop down those lies, but then to see us being represented in this specific spot is fantastic because although it be necessary, recently we've had a huge push to see Black women, to acknowledge Black women, to hold space for Black women. And I stand behind and on all of that. And at the same time, there has been this sense of all right, well, I'm a Black man. I'm here too. I want to be seen as well, but let me not do it in a way that diminishes my Black women in their moment. Because not that the moment is going to end, but it is necessary for us to uplift Black women, right? And not forget Black men. So in that, I'm getting goosebumps right now, even just talking about it. I am excited because Hakeem Jeffries, he is, as we say, a real brother, right? I hope the audience can read
because he's from the Bronx. Is that why you're saying that? Or
listen, he's just real about it. He's very real. And particularly what comes to mind, I've always watched his career. I saw him ascend, but the catastrophic events of January 6th.
Right.
A few interviews after that, when he told the story of, there was a moment where he was like, you know what, it's going to be what it's going to be. And if we have to fight our way out of this, we're not advocating violence. Let me be very clear. There's something different in advocating the violence and defending oneself. But that he was willing, him and a few other congressmen were willing to, hey, if the Capitol Police
hands,
they did, come on. Like we just gonna have to run it. It was giving very much. Let me take this suit and tie off, and it took me back to like, oh, okay, he a real brother. Like he for real, for real.
Right.
So I'm just excited, man. I'm very excited to see his ascension, and I do believe that he is going to be driving a lot of the strategy and the policy for the party. Do I think that Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn will still have some say or some sway? Let's say sway. I do. Like I said in the beginning, there is something special and there is something needed from the older generation to teach the younger generation. And obviously Nancy Pelosi was a extremely effective and consequential speaker. And so it would almost be insane to not still lean on her for advice on how he should navigate this, especially with the Democrats being in the minority, but hopefully will, retake the majority. It would almost be impractical, I think, and a little foolish to not glean from the wisdom, but still chart your own path forward. So I think both of those things can be true at once.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good perspective that you're providing with us. And one of the things that you said, there's been this conversation around Black men not showing up, either for women or not in elections. And we know that that's not true. We saw what happened in Georgia. We saw what happened really, if we look across the midterm landscape, but particularly because you brought up Georgia, and I wanted to bring up one particular candidate there. Now, there's a special election that has happened. By the time we have this conversation, it will be over. By the time that our listeners hear this, it will be over. But, there's Raphael Warnock on the Democratic side, and then there is Herschel Walker on the Republican side. And over the last couple of days, Herschel Walker has continued to say crazy things. I mean, he's always had really crazy sound bites, but he had this comment about someone called him a coon. He's okay being a coon because a coon is a smart animal. And like, what? I mean, it's hard to again, on the subject of Black men, like culturally, is he connecting? Because, there's been this gap in, Black men voting either for a candidate that they feel is very macho or a real man, or exuding this overly outward appearance of masculinity. But then you hear, a candidate like Walker say, I'm okay being called a coon. Like, make that make sense. Who says that?
Listen, he played in the NFL, and I'll just say we will be studying. Hopefully, we get a chance to study that brain at a certain point when we can. I'm not wishing anything, but it is human life that we will all run our course, right? But I do think we should probably get ahead of that and try to look at his brain after playing in the NFL. I'll leave it there because that doesn't make sense. Nothing about that statement makes sense. And honestly, Herschel Walker's candidacy is disrespectful, flat out. It's disrespectful. In that this man is one of the most, out of all the candidates that ran, and we had some horrible candidates that were either running for governor or senator. One made it through, the Senate, Congress. He's one of the worst of the worst, not only because he is completely incompetent and cannot do this job. And I don't say that lightly because I don't necessarily like to talk about people, but we have to speak truth to the situation. Herschel Walker is incompetent, and that's just flat out. And it doesn't pain me to say that about another Black man because it's the truth, particularly when that Black man is continuously allowing himself to, one, be degraded by the Republican Party, puppeting him, and then going along with the degradation and doing it himself by saying he is okay with being called a coon. In what world? On this world? Like, it's disrespectful, and it's disrespectful from the Republican Party that they would assume. And yes, Trump propped him up, but those in leadership, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, the RNC had an opportunity to run another candidate or to support other candidates and really get Herschel Walker out of the way. And they didn't. And you see them still standing by his side. But to assume that because, first off, in a historic moment of Georgia having its first Black male senator, you would put a black face in front of us, and I'm not a Georgian, so but I say us. You would put a black face in front of us, assuming that either we would be fooled by the fact that it's two black men running, or that somehow this is a viable pathway for black men and women to vote for the Republican Party, and for that candidate to lack intelligence, to be an alleged domestic violence abuser, for this person to be an outstanding hypocrite in having one view on abortion front facing, but then we hear the stories and we get the receipts.
That's right.
Your past behavior. And sure, there's space for people to change and people to change their views, but it's something very hypocritical about that when you still didn't fully explain or fully take ownership of the situation, right? Right. It's giving very much lunacy. It's giving lunacy. And so I feel disrespected by the Republican Party that they would even put forth such a candidate and still stomp for him, even in this moment where they won't even take the Senate. Excuse me. They won't even take the Senate. It's a 50-50 Senate already. So I'm not saying wash in any particular way, throw out the baby with the bathwater because your candidate is insufficient. But it's interesting to see a Lindsey Graham and a Ted Cruz continuously stomp for Herschel Walker and say, well, if we vote for him, that means Republicans aren't racist. It's disrespectful that you think that we have that little intelligence that we would buy that lie.
But the other thing, Quentin, that it also shows is that they don't have as deep of a bench as they always promote and say that they do. I mean, there are clearly other candidates that they could have chosen. If they're looking for a black candidate in particular, how and why did they choose Herschel Walker? First of all, he's not even a Georgian. He lives in Texas. So it's definitely giving Dr. Oz. It's giving Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania all over again.
Correct.
But there again, it's like just saying that you're voting for someone black makes you not racist.
Yeah.
Is that even that phrase is problematic in itself.
Extremely.
And the fact that people are these are elected officials who are saying these things.
Yeah.
What do you do about all of your constituency in your respective states? If that's how you feel about propping up a candidate again, and I agree with you, who is clearly underqualified, has some, personal challenges and issues, and maybe even having some cognitive deficiencies as well. Right. That it's just troubling to hear and to understand that this is the path that they've chosen by any means necessary. We're just going to try and push him over the finish line, all because we want a seat.
Yeah. All because you want a seat. And it again, I have to refer back to the term disrespectful because that's how I feel. And I think a lot of other black men feel that way. I don't claim to speak for all black men. I do not, or black people. But when you talk to folks, particularly Georgians and other black folks across the country, it feels disrespectful. Right. That this is the person. Herschel Walker is probably the biggest anti-black trope walking. If you could find every negative stereotype about a black person that has been perpetuated in the media over years. Now we've done a whole lot better, right? In the last decade or so, but going back decades, almost every negative stereotype that we have had to fight, tear down, show up for, be twice as good to get half as much to knock all of the shenanigans down, we have in Herschel Walker. Right. And that's why it feels so disrespectful. And you're correct, Kristal. There are plenty of other black conservatives that they could have ran in that race that, let me say this, that might have gotten some black folks' attention, right? Because not all conservatives are MAGA. Not all black conservatives are MAGA. Now, I can still debate. I don't know why you would choose to go over there, but if that's your choice, that's your choice. But there were so many other paths forward, but it is clearly showing us that it is about power. It's purely power, and it's a longer game, right? The Republicans already know they don't have the Senate, but we're talking about, what does this extra seat do? Maybe the committee assignments are still 50-50, right? Maybe even when the next cycle comes about, if they get this seat, it'll be easier. Historically, or what history tells us, this next cycle is supposed to be a good one for Republicans. But I mean, this midterm was supposed to be good for Republicans as well.
That's right. And it was not.
And it was not. It was
the
not.
red wave didn't wave.
There was no wave. We were on the shore. We put our pinky toe in the shore. That was it. That's all we did.
Oh my goodness.
And
yes.
so, I get them looking forward, but it's the candidate quality is abysmal. And I really do think the Republican Party, if their aim is truly to pull Black folks in, pull minorities in, people of color, this is not the way to do it. This is what they say they want to do, but their actions are not showing that this is truly what you want to do. It shows that it's way more performative and just frankly disrespectful.
Right. No, I totally agree. But speaking of disrespect and speaking of, Herschel Walker being a football player, there's been another prominent former football player who's been in the news lately, Deion Sanders. And just in full, transparency, I'm an HBCU graduate, so I understand the importance of having quality coaching staff, the importance of having quality facilities. But I'm Team Deion. I don't understand why folks are so upset. Yeah, I have to admit, I don't see the line in him staying at a place for 3 years, improving the program, winning a championship back to back, helping to increase the economic viability of the city that the school was in, Jackson, Mississippi. Now, I would agree. I don't like how he left. It just felt very mysterious, last minute, in your face. I'm walking away. And he said that it's not about money, allegedly. But talk to the listeners. Like, how do you feel about this whole debacle? I mean, Primetime, he does not have that nickname for a reason.
Correct.
I mean, Deion has always been in your face, flashy. It's about me. It's the Deion show.
Yeah.
And I guess my position is people take jobs and leave jobs every single day. So why is this any different than what other folks have done in a number of different areas and fields?
Yeah, it's not different. It's actually not. I agree with you. I'm not upset either. I think people are hurt. And what I do understand and recognize is we as a society have not done enough work collectively to increase our emotional intelligence. And so sometimes that hurt comes out as anger and vitriol when really it's hurt. I think people are hurt because it is prime time, right? At a HBCU, especially because as Black folks, we all knew what a HBCU was, right? We know we understand the United Negro College Fund and trying to get a higher education. Right. But for the masses, since again, media has changed in the last decade or so, people are being amplified in ways in which they weren't before. The culture at large has learned about HBCUs, has learned about not receiving enough funding, has learned about, really quality schools that produce top tier talent that don't get the same opportunities as other schools, right? And so since we have this new conscious awareness of what an HBCU is and Primetime coming in and coaching the team and transforming the team, I think he was like, for a lot of us, again, I don't want to speak for all people, but for a lot of us, he was this beacon, right? This, he was a representation of what we can do, what we can produce, although it still be in athletics, which, there's a conversation about like not always just looking at athletics to be a direct path to success for us Black folks. But that's what he was, and that's what he did. And there's no denying the work that he put in at the school. And so with him leaving, it feels like, right? And we understand that feelings are feelings. They're not always true, but they're valid. But it feels like he used an opportunity, right, to come to a HBCU, bring his big name to a HBCU, do some work, get some spotlight, and now he's left us. But that's not actually true. I would agree with you that it was a career move. Now, he could say it's not about the money all day long. I saw how much the chick was. Let me tell you how I'm leaving too. Y'all can give me half the check. I'm leaving too. Okay. He could say that. It sounds good, and maybe that's true for him. I don't buy that.
Right.
I don't buy it
either. I mean, $5 million to $150,000.
Come on now.
That math definitely adds up.
Correct. Immediately. So I mean, I do applaud him for the career move, but I also think that we shouldn't lock him in. We made him a beacon. He didn't ask to be the beacon, right? And when I say we, again, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm just saying the collective sense of how people are feeling made him such a beacon. And so I just think that's what it is. I think a lot of people are hurt by it, that it feels like he used the community and then left, when in actuality, that's not what he did. He's still going to a school, which, now he can create another pathway still for Black, Brown, Indigenous folks to go to this school or to hire talent there as well, to transform that program, to give it more visibility for Black folks as well. And so, yeah, I think that's what it is. I think a lot of people are hurt, and it's just coming out as anger, which
I agree.
I get, but it's just not true. He made a career move.
I think the other thing people have to it's very nuanced, right? Like all these decisions are nuanced. And if you think about, the coaching staff, like forget the players, let's just talk about the coaching staff. You're helping to elevate a staff of people. Maybe he brought some folks in, maybe he used what he had, but let's say they stay at JSU and they don't go to Colorado. They now have the Deion Sanders playbook. So they should be able to take that and continue a winning streak, or at least continue with the type of caliber of talent, coaching their team, helping them, progress in the SWAC tournament that they're in. So that's one thing. The facilities, the 10-year ESPN deal that he got, the SWAC tournament. That wasn't it didn't exist before Deion. And so when we talk about his legacy and what he's leaving behind, he's leaving folks with some blueprints, not only for the school, for the city. Listen, I'm from Memphis. The Southern Heritage Classic is played in Memphis between JSU and TSU. That's another remnant of his success and his, tenure at the school, by way of increasing the economic output in another city that has nothing to do with the school. And so I just want us to really think about the good that he did do. Yes, I agree with you. People are hurt. Our feelings are hurt. He could have elevated HBCU sports. He did that. He could have elevated, Black players. He did that too. He also coached his own sons. Both of them were on the team. So, I mean, listen, is it a little selfish? Probably so. But, again, you do the math between $150,000 and $5 million.
Correct.
And tell me what you're going to do.
And listen, it's not, you just listed all of those accomplishments that he brought to the city that was not there before him. There's a difference in someone using our community, which we have seen time and time again, which unfortunately will continue to happen unless we pick up on some discernment, right? But you're talking about somebody who came in, used their name and their talents, revitalized an entire community, right? That's a lot of work. Like, that is a lot of work, not only for the football team, but for the community. So now you have some type of economic sustainability and or growth, not sustainability, right? But you have increased economic growth in this community, and you still have the playbook of how these guys can win.
Absolutely.
So he left something. He didn't leave the community high and dry. He improved it, and now he went to go get a bigger check. I'm not upset.
I'm not upset either. Listen, get your money, primetime. Get your
money.
Me
a check, okay?
But I think that there's something happening with Black men who are either in sports or prominent. They have a platform. And I want to transition to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie has obviously been in the news just around, not necessarily his comments that are anti-Semitic, but the inadvertent promotion of movies or documentaries that elicit some type of negative response in people who feel attached to a certain religion or race across this country. But that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Nike dropping this man. This man, like Nike a month ago, said that they were going to, revisit or, deeply look at, his contract. And now he's dropped. And I think Ja Morant, who's a Memphis Grizzlies player, is likely to get a contract with Nike. But I just happened to go on my Nike app yesterday, and Kyrie Irving's shoes are 50% off.
Wow.
I'm like, how did this man go from Kyrie Irving, basketball player,
Yeah.
whose shoes are selling well. His shoes were selling well.
He was second to LeBron. Yeah.
To 50% off.
50%. Listen.
What?
Yeah. So a few things.
Please
Let me
break it down.
stepping
Yeah,
stones.
break it
Yeah,
down for us,
stepping
Queen.
stones till we get to the end.
Yes.
You one, it should go without saying, but you are responsible for your comments, right? I'm a
Absolutely.
person that believes you are responsible for your intent and your impact, right?
Okay, that's fair.
What's clear to me is in Kyrie's world, his intent was not to hurt folks. He thought he was educating, enlightening people. Words are being used by him, not me. That's the intent.
Okay.
But the impact was hurtful. The impact is dangerous. So you still are responsible for both your intent and your impact, right? So there's that. As far as him being dropped by Nike, I think I saw this very long tweet or post from Sean King, just kind of like going off on Nike about dropping Kyrie. And a part of me feels the same way. And at the same time, Nike is Nike's business. Okay. And so when you essentially work for someone else or partner with, collaborate with, you are at the mercy of the other side of that relationship.
That's right.
And if the other side of that relationship is holding basically all the cards, right? Right. There is a certain line you must walk to be in good standing in that relationship. Does it make it right? I guess I could argue both sides if really forced to, right? Whether it be right or wrong. But ultimately, I think it takes me to a conversation about ownership, because what I would say is that it does seem like the treatment of Kyrie, it feels like, again, and feelings are valid, but they may not necessarily be true, but it does feel like it's an attempt to bury him, right? At a certain point, and I just made a post about this with Will Smith, kind of like with Will Smith, we continuously, people are still asking about the slap. It's been asked and answered. Stop asking him about it. He's already apologized for it.
Okay. All right.
Stop asking him about it. You know, still hold space for Chris Rock to say whatever Chris Rock wants to say when he wants to say, because he was impacted, but like the man has apologized already. So in that, so when I take it back to Kyrie, it does feel like it's a continuation. Like the shoe just keeps getting dropped and dropped and dropped again, almost to bury him. And that is the consequence, again, of being in partnership and collaboration with someone else. Now it takes me to ownership. If, let's say, there was a company that was just as profitable, just as brand recognition wise, as big as Nike, that wanted to give him a deal and kind of work with Kyrie through the situation, or for that matter, any other celebrity who makes missteps, who is about, you know, redemption and giving people a chance, then you have an opportunity to make mistakes, be human, but still maintain your lifestyle, if you will, based on the check that you're receiving. But Nike is owned by the people that own Nike. And so Kyrie, you kind of got to walk in line with it. And that's honestly, it's everyone. It is everyone that works for someone. That's just the reality that we live in. Now, what Kyrie could do is try to create his own shoe and sell it direct to direct to customers. Maybe that's the move, because take it out from Kyrie, a lot of us are at risk of potentially losing a brand deal, losing a sponsorship, if we have a view that doesn't necessarily align with someone else's who has the decision-making capabilities.
That's right.
Right.
And it, really, I'm sorry. It just it reminds me of like the Balenciaga thing, right? Yeah. You see Kanye, attempting to call them out, but Kanye's had clearly, as he likes to be called, he's had his own just problems in general. But what does this say about forgiveness and redemption, right? Like you brought up Will Smith. We don't want to hear him apologize again. He's apologized. Hopefully he's going through therapy. Hopefully he's learning whatever the things that one needs to do to go through a public level of forgiveness and redemption. Yeah. We would hope that those men are doing that, but all of these men are Black men that we're talking about. So what is like at what point, and I'm doubling down on what you said about ownership with Kyrie. Same thing with Kanye, same thing with Will Smith, if you will. Like, what does it say to us as, people who are consumers of entertainment, people who are consumers of maybe sports or consumers of music or movies, whatever? How do we reconcile with watching someone go through something, attempting to, right size the situation,
Right.
and then still see them, get a deal drop, a major deal at that?
Yeah.
What is that like? What are we saying to the public? What are we saying to people who may make mistakes? Maybe they're private, they're not public because we're not necessarily big superstars like them.
Sure.
But I'm concerned about forgiveness and redemption. Like
Yeah.
what does it mean? And these are Black men that we're talking about as well.
Yeah, I think, well, let me parse out of all those people you said, Kanye has yet to, or Ye, has yet to try to
That's true.
atone for his missteps. So let's put him in a separate bucket. Let's just put him over there because every day is something new. But what does it say? It feels, and I think what it says at large is that, I hate to say it because it feels all or nothing, but that maybe Black people, Black men are not necessarily as safe to just exist and still be human, because we do make mistakes.
Right.
Everyone actually makes mistakes, not just Black people, but everyone makes mistakes. But that's what it seems like. It seems as though we're saying that we are still not allowed to be fully human and to make a faux pas or make a misstep or you know what, honestly, to have a view, right? To have a view and then learn and then decide that, you know what, I can change this view because of what, maybe it's my background or where my own thought processes of what I thought something was, but maybe it's not actually that, right? Because sometimes it's not a mistake. Sometimes these are real beliefs for people. That's right. So it does seem like that's what we're saying. Like Black men are not able to just be human and make mistakes or make decisions that would ultimately, impact them for the worse. But I think that it's incumbent upon us to honestly really start trying to create our own systems, start to try to create our own structures. That does not mean, I've heard, I think sometimes I kind of side-eye Jay-Z a little bit because I've heard him say, certain times that people will rather work with this person rather than work with me. That doesn't mean just because one Black person has something that we all have to run over there and work with them, right? Multiple people can do multiple things because there may be multiple giftings, and then also forethought of alignment in what it is we're trying to build and what we stand on. Maybe I don't want to partner with you, And that's okay. You're Black, I support you, go for it. But maybe there are certain things morally that I don't want to stand by, and I want to do the same thing, but I'm gonna do it over here, right? So I think it's incumbent upon us to really start building and creating our own structures and systems, not locking everyone out, saying like it's only for Black people. White people can come, Asian people can come, everybody can come, bring the dollars. But for us to be in those positions where you can make the decision on whether someone will or will not keep their check. That's the power.
That is the power. And I think that's a really good, kind of wrap up to really talking about that. But I gotta ask you, Quentin, just because you're all about culture, right? You're giving us the culture today. I do have to ask you, how do you feel about this current iteration of where Ye is? Kanye West, now known as Ye. He recently did a podcast where he made some deeply troubling, even more anti-Semitic comments about Jews. He was fully masked. I don't even know what that's about. He's obviously been dropped. He's lost a lot of brand deals. He's called out Balenciaga, but he has not made atonement for his comments about Jews, and he's continuing to do it. He's actually doubling down. And I still see people walking around with Yeezys on
to this day.
And no shade to anyone who owns Yeezys. I'm not judging you, but what I am saying is, what is that signaling? When we talk about redemption, we're talking about forgiveness. We're talking about another Black man who is a business owner, who Sway told him 10 years ago to create his own, and he decided to go with Gap and with Adidas and with other brands. But before we can even get into his business dealings, what is up with him, man? Like, what is going on? Like, I've been turned off from him for a long time. And I don't support any of his fashion brands or anything. And I'm not judging anyone who does, but I just cannot understand why he continues to go on this
Mhm.
media tour where
Yeah.
he's just being nasty. He's doing the nasty work, as folks
He
like to
is.
say.
He is. It's lost upon me how our good sis Britney Spears was in that conservatorship for all of those years
Woo,
for cutting her hair and having
woo.
a a relationship meltdown, and yet and still
Listen,
nobody has filed the papers for Kanye.
ooh, that's a very good point. Very
I don't
good
know.
point.
It's
Very
because he did it
save him from himself.
correct because it has slipped into a point of it's weird. It's
Yeah.
something is clearly not right. But we've known something has not always been right for a while,
For a
but
while.
something is clearly not right. When the mass situation on, I'm not even going to speak the man's name, on the podcast he was on, it's something's not clicking. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I just don't know how somebody needs to, intervention, psych assessment, something immediately. But since that's not happened and he's continuing to go out, I don't know if Kanye is trying to be like Black Trump, because we do know he's running for president, and we saw the
Allegedly.
firebrand of Donald Trump right in 2016, and it worked for him. It seems to continue to work for him, which is baffling upon me, especially with his new calls to upend the Constitution, and we hear nothing about that. It's actually quite
Listen.
scary, but
Right.
that's another podcast for another day. And so I don't know if Kanye is trying to mimic that because he
Mhm.
wants to be president. Um, I honestly don't know. I don't know what's going on with Kanye. But what I do know is that he as well is responsible for his intent and impact. And I would almost argue that his intent seems to be hurtful, to be disrespectful, to stir people up, particularly in the Black community, when he started coming at us in his collaboration with Candace Owens and saying, well,
Yeah.
where was the Black community when the Kim and the Kardashians were trying to take our kids? First off, we told you years ago, don't do it. Let's start
Listen,
there.
let's start right there.
Let's start there. We've been yelling and told you before you married Kim, but because it's your choice, because it's your right, you married the person that you love. You had children with her. You ingratiated yourself in that family, but somehow now when there is a split or a separation and you don't feel as though Black people are coming to your aid in this custody battle or whatever y'all have going on in you all's marriage, it's now Black folks' part or Black folks' problem. And you would try to degrade us and tear us down and be horrifically, I don't even have words for what they're trying to do or tried to do with George Floyd and lying about how this man was murdered on camera as if our eyes were lying to ourselves. It feels intentional. All
Yeah, it
those comments
does.
felt like you were trying to hurt us because you didn't feel as though we showed up for you in your private family domestic squabble.
Yeah,
It
it
actually
feels
has nothing.
anti-Black too. That's what it feels
It's
like.
very anti-Black. Yeah, so I can't even get to the anti-Semitism before I get past the anti-Black. So
Yeah.
I truly don't know what's going on with him. But like I said, it feels as though the intent is to hurt people, no matter
Mhm.
who it is, because he's hurt.
Yeah.
Which leads me back to I don't know why we have not filed papers of conservatorship because of the microphone, of the power and the influence that he has. Even though he's burning it to the ground, like you said, there are still people that follow him. There are still people, and not even maybe even people who bought into his brand prior to the hateful comments. But
Yeah.
now there are people that look for such a leader,
Mhm.
right? To be hateful, to give them license to hurt people, to track them down, whether you agree or not agree with drag shows or Jews, and to hurt them, to hurt Black folks.
Yeah.
So his intent and his impact has become dangerous to the community at large. And I'm gonna say it again, I don't understand why we don't have conservatorship papers, or at least are looking into it at this point.
That's, you know what? That's a really good point. I'm so glad you brought that up about Britney Spears and just the line between, her and Kanye, because it would seem as if there are folks who are around him who care about him, just like there were allegedly people around Britney who cared about her. I'm sure she feels differently,
Sure.
that someone would intervene and really step in to save him from himself, just like they attempted to save her from herself. But
Yes.
you know what, Quentin, I think this has been such a great conversation about Black men and the culture and where we are today. I mean, we've talked about Hakeem Jeffries, Herschel Walker, Deion Sanders, Kyrie Irving, a little bit we touched on Will Smith, and now Ye. And I don't want this conversation to end.
Me either. Bring me back. I'll come back anytime.
I will. I absolutely will. I will bring you back in short order.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
I'm so thankful, though, that you stopped by and shared with our listeners exactly what is happening with Black men in the culture right now, because these are conversations that are going to continue to pop up and we're going to have conversations about it. And we need to bring this to platforms like this so we can have folks understand and break down exactly what is happening in the world right now. So I just want to say thank you again for being here today. And I hope listeners really enjoy this episode, and we will definitely bring you back.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say again, congratulations on the podcast. You deserve it. You deserve this and so much more. And I'm excited about coming back, and I'm excited about where this podcast for you is going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Quentin. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.